Have you ever felt like you're standing at the edge of something massive, something you can't quite see, but you know is there? It's like a door, a heavy, ancient door, and you've been pushing against it for years, pushing with everything you have, your ambition, your willpower, your late nights and early mornings, but the door won't budge. Now, what if I told you that you've been pushing on the wrong side? What if the door doesn't open by pushing harder, but by simply turning around? Most people spend their entire lives trying to break through walls that were never meant to be broken. They exhaust themselves fighting a battle that was already won before they were born. Tonight, we're not going to push anymore. We're going to stop. We're going to turn around. And we're going to find out what's been waiting on the other side all along. Let's sit with this for a moment. Let's really feel into what's being said here, because the hidden problem is so close to us that we've stopped being able to see it. It's like a pair of glasses you've worn for so long that you forget they're there. You forget that you're seeing the world through a lens at all. You begin to believe that the way you see things is simply the way things are. The hidden problem is the fog. But let's go deeper into what this fog actually is, because it's not just distraction in the way we normally use that word. It's not just checking your phone too often or getting lost in social media. Those things are symptoms. They are the visible tips of a much larger, much more invisible iceberg. The fog is a condition of the mind. It is a state of constant, low-grade chaos. Imagine a room full of people all talking at once, not loudly, but persistently. A murmur here, a whisper there. Someone is talking about a bill you forgot to pay. Someone else is replaying an argument you had 5 years ago. Another voice is worrying about what someone might think of you tomorrow. And in the corner, a quiet, desperate voice is just repeating, "I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough." This is the inner world of the average person. A crowded room that never empties. A mind that has no doorman, no bouncer, no gatekeeper. Every thought, every worry, every fear, every random desire can walk right in, take a seat, and start shouting. And because the owner of the room doesn't know they have the authority to ask anyone to leave, the room just gets more and more crowded, louder and louder, until the owner can no longer hear themselves think. And when you cannot hear yourself think, you cannot hear your own soul. You cannot hear that still, small voice that knows exactly where you're supposed to go and who you're supposed to become. That voice is still there. It never leaves, but it is soft. It is gentle. It does not shout over the crowd. It waits for the crowd to quiet down. And the crowd never does, not unless you make it. This is why most people live their entire lives on the surface. They never dive into the deep waters where the pearls are found. They stay in the shallow end, splashing around, because the deep water requires silence. It requires solitude. It requires a willingness to be alone with yourself, without the noise. And for most people, that is the most terrifying thing in the world. To be alone with the crowd in their own head? No thank you. They'd rather turn on the television. They'd rather pick up their phone. They'd rather do anything than sit in the quiet and face the chaos within. But here is the truth that changes everything. The chaos is only there because you have never asked for silence. The crowd only shouts because you have never told them to be quiet. You are the owner of that room. You have always been the owner. You just forgot. The fog of distraction is not something that happens to you. It is something you allow. Every time you reach for your phone, instead of sitting with your thoughts, you are feeding the fog. Every time you replay a worry, instead of focusing on your purpose, you are thickening the fog. Every time you let the opinion of someone else dictate how you feel, you are adding another layer to the fog. And the fog does what fog always does. It keeps you from seeing the shore. It keeps you from seeing the stars. It keeps you sailing in circles, convinced you're making progress because the engine is running and the water is churning behind you. But without a destination, without a fixed point on the horizon, you are just drifting. Drifting with the current. Drifting with the wind. Drifting with the wind. Drifting wherever the world pushes you. Most people never notice this. They never notice that they've been drifting their whole life. They wake up at 40 or 50 or 60 and they look around and they wonder how they got here. They wonder why they feel so empty, despite having done everything they were supposed to do. They wonder where the years went. They wonder where they went. The fog took them, not in a dramatic, sudden way, not in a storm or a catastrophe, but slowly, gently, imperceptibly, day by day, distraction by distraction, until one day they realize they can't see the shore anymore. They can't even remember what shore they were sailing toward in the first place. This is the hidden problem. It is not a lack of effort. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is a lack of clarity. It is a mind so cluttered with the debris of modern life that it has lost its ability to focus on anything long enough to bring it into being. And as long as the fog remains, you will remain exactly where you are, busy, tired, and going nowhere. But the moment you recognize the fog for what it is, the moment you realize that you are the one who has been feeding it, and that you are also the one who can dispel it that moment, everything begins to change. Because the sun is always there, behind the clouds. It never left. You just forgot how to let it shine through. Now that we've recognized the fog for what it is, we must turn our attention to the cage. And this cage is unlike any other, because you cannot see its bars. You cannot feel its lock. You cannot touch its walls. It is made entirely of thought. It is the conditioned mind. From your very first breath, long before you could speak or walk or understand the words being spoken around you, the conditioning began. It began with the way your mother held you when you cried. It began with the tone of your father's voice when you misbehaved. It began with the faces people made when you did something they liked, and the faces they made when you did something they didn't. You were being programmed to seek approval, programmed to avoid rejection, programmed to believe that love was something you had to earn, and that safety was something that existed outside of you. By the time you were old enough to form your own thoughts, the program was already running, and it has been running ever since, beneath the surface, invisible, automatic, controlling everything. Here is how the trap works. Something happens in the world outside you. Let's say someone criticizes you. Immediately, before you have even had a chance to think, a feeling arises. Perhaps it's anger. Perhaps it's shame. Perhaps it's a deep, familiar wound of unworthiness. You didn't choose this feeling. It simply appeared. And then, a moment later, the thoughts come rushing in to justify the feeling. They're wrong about me. They don't understand me. I knew I wasn't good enough. I always messed things up. This all happens in a fraction of a second. It is a chain reaction set in motion long ago by 1,000 similar moments from your past. The person standing in front of you today is not really the cause of your pain. They are merely the trigger. The pain was already there, waiting. The program was already written, waiting to be executed. And this is the trap. You believe you are responding to the present moment, but you are not. You are responding to the past. You are running a script that was written by a child for a world that no longer exists. You are seeing today through glasses that were ground for you decades ago by people and experiences that have long since passed. The average person lives their entire life this way. They are a bundle of conditioned reflexes bouncing from one reaction to the next. Someone praises them and they feel elated. Someone ignores them and they feel deflated. The stock market goes up and they feel hopeful. The stock market goes down and they feel terrified. They are like a leaf on a river, tossed and turned by every current, every eddy, every passing breeze. They have no say in where they go. They just go. But here is a question that changes everything. If your thoughts and feelings are just reactions to things that happen to you, then who are you really? If you are just a collection of conditioned responses, a bundle of reflexes, then where is the you in all of that? Where is the chooser? Where is the one who decides? Think about this carefully. You have thoughts, yes. But who is it that notices you having thoughts? You have feelings, yes. But who is it that observes those feelings arising and passing away? There is something in you that is aware of the thoughts. There is something in you that witnesses the feelings. That something is not the thoughts. That something is not the thoughts. That something is not the feelings. That something is the watcher, the observer, the awareness itself. The trap is that you have forgotten you are the watcher. You have come to believe that you are the thoughts. You have come to believe that you are the feelings. You have become so identified with the content of your mind that you have lost touch with the consciousness that contains it. Napoleon Hill, in his study of the great minds of his era, discovered that these men had one thing in common. They had learned to master their own thoughts. They had not eliminated the conditioned mind, but they had stepped outside of it. They had become the programmer rather than the program. Andrew Carnegie, for example, did not react to the panics and crashes of his time the way others did. While others were paralyzed by fear, he was calm. While others were selling, he was buying. Why? Because he was not being run by the collective panic. He was not a leaf on the river. He had stepped onto the shore. He could see the river rushing by, but he was not in it. This is the great shift. The moment you realize that you are not your thoughts, but the thinker of your thoughts. The moment you realize that you are not your feelings, but the experiencer of your feelings. In that moment, the cage door opens. The bars were never real. They were only ever thoughts, believing themselves to be solid. The conditioned mind will continue to throw its old scripts at you. It will continue to offer its automatic reactions. But now you have a choice. You can watch the thought arise and decide not to act on it. You can feel the feeling rise and simply observe it without letting it carry you away. You become the master of your inner world rather than its slave. And when you become the master of your inner world, the outer world begins to rearrange itself around you, because the outer world is not separate from the inner world. It is a reflection, a mirror. As within, so without. Change the programmer, and the program changes. Change the mind, and the world changes with it. The cage was never locked. You just had to realize you were the one holding the key. So we have seen the fog. We have felt the bars of the cage. And now we arrive at the place where everything shifts. The principle that changes everything. Napoleon Hill called it many things throughout his years of research. He called it the definite major purpose. He called it the burning desire. But these are just words. And words have a way of becoming hollow when they are repeated too often. So, let us strip them down. Let us go back to the raw essence of what he discovered. Imagine for a moment that your mind is not just a crowded room, as we spoke of earlier. Imagine it is a garden, a vast, fertile piece of land. Now, this land does not care what grows in it. It is completely neutral. It will grow tomatoes with the same enthusiasm it grows poison ivy. It will grow oak trees with the same energy it grows thorns. The soil does not judge. It simply receives whatever seed is planted, and it gives that seed everything it needs to become what it was always meant to become. This is the law. This is the principle, and it is absolute. Whatever seed you plant in the soil of your mind, the soil will bring it to life. Not because the soil is magic, but because that is what soil does. It grows things. It cannot help itself. Now, here is the tragedy of the average person. They walk through their garden every day, but they never intentionally plant anything. They just let the wind bring whatever seeds it wants. A seed of worry blows in from the news and it takes root. A seed of resentment blows in from an old argument and it takes root. A seed of envy blows in from watching someone else's success and it takes root. Before long, the garden is not a garden at all. It is a wilderness, a tangled, chaotic mess of weeds, all fighting for sunlight, all competing for space. And in the middle of all that chaos, the one thing the person actually wants, the oak tree of their purpose, the tomato vine of their passion, cannot grow. There is no room. There is no light. The weeds have taken everything. This is what Hill meant when he spoke of the definite major purpose. He was not talking about setting a New Year's resolution. He was not talking about writing down a goal and sticking it on your bathroom mirror. He was talking about the conscious, deliberate, violent act of clearing the field, of getting down on your hands and knees and pulling out every weed, every doubt, every fear, every distraction, until the soil is bare, until it is ready, and then placing one single seed into that prepared soil. One seed, one burning, all-consuming desire, and covering it with the warm earth of your faith. But it does not end there. This is where most people stop. They plant the seed and then they walk away. They expect it to grow while they go back to tending the weeds. It does not work that way. A seed, once planted, must be nurtured. It must be watered. It must be given sunlight. And in the garden of the mind, water is attention. Sunlight is belief. You must water that seed every single day. You must return to it again and again and give it your focus. You must see it in your mind, not as a seed, but as a full-grown tree. You must feel the texture of its bark. You must taste the fruit of its harvest. You must live in the reality of its fulfillment, long before it has appeared in the outer world. This is what the great achievers do. They do not wait for success to feel successful. They feel successful first, and the success has no choice but to follow. Henry Ford, one of the men Hill studied, did not know how a V8 engine would be built when he first conceived of it. His engineers told him it was impossible. The laws of physics, they said, would not allow it. But Ford did not argue with them. He did not try to prove them wrong with diagrams or calculations. He simply held the image of that engine in his mind with such intensity, with such unwavering faith, that the universe had to reorganize itself to bring it forth. And eventually it did. The engine was built. The impossible became possible. Not because Ford was a genius engineer, but because he understood the law of the planted seed. This is the turning point. It is the moment you stop letting the wind plant your garden. It is the moment you take responsibility for what grows in the soil of your mind. It is the moment you choose one thing, one burning, obsessive, undeniable thing, and you give yourself to it completely. Most people are afraid to do this. They are afraid to want one thing too much because they are afraid of disappointment. They keep their desires scattered, their passions diluted, because if you only want one thing and you fail, then you have failed completely. But if you want a little bit of everything, you can tell yourself you haven't really failed at anything. This is the safety net of the mediocre, and it is a lie. The truth is, you cannot fail at the thing you are committed to. You can only learn. You can only grow. The seed that does not germinate is not a failure. It is compost for the next seed. But the person who never plants deeply, who never commits fully, who never burns with a single, definite purpose, that person has already failed. They have failed to live. They have failed to become who they were meant to be. The principle that changes everything is simple, but it is not easy. It requires a kind of courage that most people do not possess. The courage to clear the field, the courage to choose one seed, the courage to water it with your attention day after day, even when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, because underground, in the darkness, the roots are growing. The foundation is being laid, and one day, without warning, the shoot will break through the soil, and the world will wonder where it came from. But you will know it came from the seed you planted in the stillness long ago. Now we come to a part of this wisdom that is rarely understood. It is the secret within the secret, the hidden mechanism that separates those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream of it. Napoleon Hill called it the master mind. But like so many powerful ideas, the phrase has been worn smooth by overuse. People hear it and think of networking events, of business partnerships, of shaking hands and exchanging business cards. That is not what we are talking about here. Not even close. Let us go deeper. Imagine two logs, side by side in a cold fireplace. Each log, by itself, contains the potential for heat. But if you strike a match and hold it to one log, what happens? It might catch. It might flicker for a moment. But alone, without the presence of another burning log, the flame will struggle. It will fight against the cold air. It will flicker and smoke, and more often than not, it will die out before it truly catches. One log, burning alone, rarely becomes a fire. But now take that same match. Hold it to the space between two logs that have been placed close together. When one catches, its heat radiates toward the other. The second log begins to warm. Its internal temperature rises. And at a certain point, when the heat reaches the ignition point, the second log bursts into flame. And when two logs are burning together, something magical happens. They are no longer two separate fires. They become one. The heat from one feeds the other. The flames dance together, reaching higher than either could alone. The fire becomes self-sustaining. It can survive wind. It can survive cold. It can burn long into the night, warming everything around it. This is the mastermind. It is not two people working together. It is two minds, two souls, two purposes brought so close together in harmony that they ignite a third force. A force that is invisible, intangible, but absolutely real. A force that did not exist before they came together. A force that cannot be created by one person alone, no matter how brilliant or determined that person might be. The great achievers understood this. They knew that their own mind, no matter how powerful, had limits. There were blind spots they could not see. There were doubts that crept in during the dark hours. There was a ceiling on their own imagination. But when they joined their mind with another mind, tuned to the same frequency, focused on the same purpose, that ceiling dissolved. The blind spots were illuminated. The doubts were absorbed by the collective faith. The imagination of one sparked the imagination of the other, and together they could see things that neither could see alone. This is why Hill stressed again and again the importance of harmony, not just cooperation, but harmony. Cooperation is mechanical. It is two people agreeing to work together for mutual benefit. It is a transaction. Harmony is organic. It is two people who have aligned themselves so completely at such a deep level that their individual egos have stepped aside. There is no competition. There is no jealousy. There is no guarding of territory. There is only the shared purpose, burning between them like the fire between the logs. Think about the great achievements of history. Were they the work of lone geniuses? Or were they the product of invisible alliances, of minds working in secret harmony, of forces joining together that the world never saw? The lone genius is a myth, a romantic story we tell ourselves because it is simpler than the truth. The truth is that behind every great fortune, every great movement, every great leap forward, there was a mastermind, sometimes visible, more often hidden, a small group of people who had learned to think together, to feel together, to want the same thing with such intensity that the universe itself had to bend to their will. Andrew Carnegie did not build his empire alone. He surrounded himself with a team of men who were, in many cases, more talented than he was in their specific fields. But he did something that few leaders do. He did not just hire them. He harmonized with them. He created an atmosphere, a psychic space, where their individual minds could blend into something greater. He gave them a share of the purpose, a piece of the dream. And in doing so, he multiplied his own power 100-fold. The average person tries to do everything alone. They hoard their ideas. They guard their territory. They are afraid that if they let someone else in, they will lose something. But this is the thinking of scarcity. This is the mind that believes there is only so much to go around. The mastermind operates from a different law entirely. It knows that when two minds truly harmonize, the sum is not 2. It is 3 or 4 or 10. Something new is born, something that transcends the individuals involved. And this is available to you, not just to the Carnegies and the Fords of the world, but to anyone willing to lay down their ego long enough to find another soul vibrating at the same frequency. It could be a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be a mentor or a student. It could be someone you have not even met yet. But the principle is the same. Find someone who shares your definite major purpose, not someone who merely agrees with it, but someone who burns with it the way you do, and then together create a space of perfect harmony. No competition, no judgment, no holding back, just two flames burning so close together that they become one fire. When you find this, everything changes. The burdens become lighter. The path becomes clearer. The doubts that once paralyzed you are absorbed by the collective faith, and you begin to move through life with a power that is not your own, but that is yours to use. This is the secret of the mastermind. It is the hidden engine of every great achievement, and it is waiting for you as soon as you are ready to stop going it alone. And so we arrive at the final movement, the quiet awakening, the moment when the searching stops not because you have given up, but because you have finally understood. This is the hardest part to put into words because it lives beyond language. It lives in the space between thoughts, in the silence between words. but we will try, because this is where everything you have heard tonight finally comes together. This is where the seed breaks through the soil. For your entire life, you have been a seeker. You have been looking for something. Perhaps you called it success. Perhaps you called it happiness. Perhaps you called it love, or security, or peace. Whatever name you gave it, the experience was the same. A feeling of reaching, a feeling of striving, a feeling that something was missing, and that if you could just find it, just grasp it, just hold it in your hands, you would finally be complete. This is the condition of almost every human being on this planet. It is a kind of quiet desperation, as Thoreau called it, a sense that the thing you need is always just ahead of you, just out of reach. So you run, you chase, you work, you pray, you hope, and sometimes you catch something, a promotion, a relationship, a house, a car. And for a moment, the reaching stops. For a moment, you feel like you have arrived. But the feeling never lasts. It always fades. And soon enough, the reaching begins again. The seeking resumes. Because the thing you caught was not the thing you were really looking for. Now, let me ask you something. And I want you to sit with this question. Do not answer it with your mind. Feel into it with your heart. What if the thing you have been seeking your entire life is not something you can find? What if it is something you can only be? Think about that for a moment. What if peace is not something you achieve, but something you are? What if abundance is not something you accumulate, but something you radiate? What if love is not something you receive from another person, but something you give because you are overflowing with it? What if the entire search has been backwards? This is the quiet awakening. This is the shift from seeking to being, and it changes everything. The average person believes that if they could get enough of the right things on the outside, they will finally feel complete on the inside. They believe that the outer world is the cause and the inner world is the effect. Get the money, then feel secure. Get the relationship, then feel loved. Get the recognition, then feel worthy. This is how almost everyone lives, and it is exactly backwards. The truth is the opposite. The inner world is the cause. The outer world is the effect. If you want to feel secure, you must first be secure. If you want to feel loved, you must first be loving. If you want to feel worthy, you must first know, deep in your bones, that you are worthy, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says or does. The outer world will then rearrange itself to reflect this inner truth. It has no choice. It is a mirror. It can only show you what you're being. This is why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It is not a conspiracy. It is a law. The person who is being rich in their consciousness, who feels abundant, who feels generous, who feels that there is more than enough for everyone, that person will attract more abundance, not because they are lucky, but because they are in alignment with the law. The person who is being poor in their consciousness, who feels scarce, who feels fearful, who feels that there is never enough, that person will attract more scarcity. The mirror reflects whatever you bring to it. Now, you might be thinking, but I don't feel abundant. I feel scared. I feel lacking. How can I be something I am not? This is the question that stops most people. And the answer is subtle, but it is the key to everything. You do not have to manufacture feelings you do not have. You do not have to pretend to be rich when you feel poor. That is just another form of seeking, another form of striving. What you have to do is go deeper, below the feelings, below the thoughts, below the conditioned mind. There is a place in you that has never been lacking. There is a place in you that has always been whole, always been complete, always been enough. The mystics call it the soul. Hill might have called it the infinite intelligence. You can call it whatever you like, but it is there. It has always been there. It has simply been covered over by layers and layers of conditioning, of fear, of seeking. The quiet awakening is the moment you make contact with that place. It is the moment you stop running long enough to realize that you are standing on solid ground. It is the moment you stop searching for water and realize you are standing on the bank of a river. It was always there. You just had to stop walking long enough to see it. This is not about giving up on your goals. It is not about becoming passive or indifferent. It is about shifting the ground from which your action springs. When you act from a place of lack, your actions are desperate, grasping, fearful. They push people away. They close doors. When you act from a place of being, your actions are calm, confident, generous. They attract people. They open doors. The action is the same. The difference is the consciousness behind it. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying the laws of success. But if you read his work closely, if you read between the lines, you will see that he was pointing to something beyond success. He was pointing to a transformation of the self. He was saying, in essence, that you cannot get rich. You can only become rich. You cannot get wise. You can only become wise. You can only become wise. You cannot get love. You can only become love. The search is over. It ended before it began. You are not a seeker. You are a finder. You have always been what you were looking for. The only thing left is to stop, to be still, to let the fog clear on its own, and to watch as the world rearranges itself around the quiet truth of who you really are.